Okay, now we're going to continue with our example here of a loan where we borrowed $10,000 for 5 years. Interest rate is 10% per year. Now, in the previous video now, I showed you how to come up with the payments on the loan. And what we came up with was $26.37.96. And what we're going to show you now, or what I'm going to show you now, is how you amortize the loan. That is, how do you break the payment down between interest and principal repayment in each period that you are making a payment. Now, some things that you have to keep track of. One is in the time period. Now, I want you to note that within now, people like you and I think loans start when our payments start. Actually, the loan starts when they give you the money. In this case, when they give you the $10,000. Technically, that's at time period 0. And as we talked about before, a loan is an ordinary annuity. That is, the payments come at the end of every time period. So you don't make a payment at time period 0, you make a payment one time period later. And that occurs at the end of every year for 5 years. So your last payment is going to be, December 31st, year 5, and you're going to pay them $26.37.96. That's when the last payment is. Now, payments are made up of two things, interest and principal. Now, this little formula that you see in the brackets up here, the payment is always equal to the interest plus the principal. So that little formula now is going to be what we kind of whirl around, if you will, to separate out the interest and the principal portion of the payment each year. At time period 0, what you owe the bank now is $10,000. That's how much money you borrowed from the bank. And so once you set this up here, you can go ahead and amortize the loan. So you need to keep track of the time periods. You need to know the payment, which we've done previously. You need to keep track of the interest portion of each payment, the principal portion of each payment, and the last column is called the loan balance. Now, banks can charge you and I fees, a late fee, an overdraft fee, whatever. But the only thing they can charge us interest on is called the loan balance. So that's an important thing, and that's important because that's going to tell us what our interest payment is each month. So in this case now, we start the loan period, time period 0. The bank gives us $10,000, and we use that much of their money for a year before we make our first payment. Well, what does the bank charge us on interest on money that we have of theirs? Well, they charge us 10% per year. So if you take $10,000, multiply it by 10%, that is 10,000 times 0.10, you'll get $1,000. So we know that this payment, which we already know, $1,000 of the payment is interest. The difference, $26.37.96 minus 1,000, that has to be the principal portion of the first payment, which turns out to be $16.37.96. So at this point now, we know how much is interest and we know how much is principal. And after the first payment now, we've paid the bank for the use of their money for a year. We used $10,000 of their money for a year. 10% of that's $1,000. That's indeed how much we pay them to use their money for a year. With that first payment now, we've paid back that original loan, that original $10,000. We've paid back $16.37.96. If you take the beginning loan balance and subtract out the principal portion of the first payment, you get $83.6204. So we start the second year of the loan, owing the bank $83.6204, and we use that much of their money for a year before we make our next payment. 10% of that loan balance, $836.20. The payment minus the interest gives us the principal portion of the payment, and if you subtract that from the beginning loan balance, the beginning of the second year, you get $65.60.28. You start third year of the loan, own the bank $25.60.28. You use that much of their money for a year, they're going to charge you 10% interest. 10% of $65.60.28 is $656.03. Take the difference between the payment and the interest, that gives us the principal portion, and that leaves us with a balance at the end of the third year of $4578.35. So we start the fourth year owing the bank this much money. We use that much of their money for a year, they're going to charge us 10% of that, or $457.83 in interest. The difference between the payment and the interest is the principal portion of the payment. And that means with the fourth payment, we've paid down $21.80 of the loan. That means we start the last year owing the bank $23.98.22 at the beginning of the last year of the loan. $45.78 minus $21.80 gets us $23.98. We start the fifth year, the last year of the loan, owing the bank $23.98.22. We use that much of their money for a year before we make our last payment. They're going to charge us 10% of this beginning loan balance, which is $239.82. The difference between the payment and the interest is the principal portion. Now, I want you to note now, can we pay off this much money with that much money? Well, it turns out the answer is no, we can't. And a loan isn't finished. We're not through with a loan until the loan balance goes to zero. Now, all loans have rounding error. In this case, we had a rounding error of 8 cents. Now, what that means is that in the contract that calls for the payments, where they describe the payments to you at the bank, they're going to tell you that you're going to make 4 payments of $26.37.96. Your fifth payment here is going to be 8 cents more. And when you do that, that's going to make the loan balance zero.